Welcome to Hey Coach Tony, the top broadcast in youth sports, where you get to call in and give your opinion. Call 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. Give your opinion. And now here's your host, Tony Fiorino.
What a way to start a Saturday morning. Welcome to Hey Coach Tony, everybody. I'm your host, Tony Fiorino. As you know, each week here on Hey Coach Tony, we tackle the hottest topics in youth sports. And we always want to hear what you guys have to say. So we've already opened up the studio lines at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. Now this week, we're going to talk about how involved, if at all, the school sports programs should intermingle with the town recreational programs. Should the AD have some input into how the town programs are run? Should the high school coaches have involvement in the town and travel programs? Now, I know there are a lot of differing opinions on this one, so give us a call. Let us know what you think. It's 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. Also, a little later on in the show, if we have time, I want to tell you a quick story. This one's been eating me alive all week long. I remember last week we discussed an article that was highlighting the 20 questions parents should ask before the season. Even though I disagreed with some of the questions and even the idea of whether or not parents should ask so many questions to the coach, wasn't I more than respectful of the author of that article? I mean, I got two guests in studio. Wasn't I really respectful of the author in that whole show?
Absolutely.
All right, let's tell you what. Did I make any personal comments or disrespect the author in any way? Not, of course not. All right. If you're not sure, do me a favor. Go quickly check out last week's show. You can get it on iHide.com under Hey Coach Tony or on YouTube. But again, I was nothing but respectful of the article and simply made some comments and suggestions about how some things could be clarified. Well, wouldn't you know it, human nature just rears its ugly head. And in this case, it reared its ugly head in the form of a self-righteous hack journalist with zero integrity. And I'm going to try to get to this one later, but this woman, and I'm not even going to use her name anymore, this woman openly lied to me and about me and went underhandedly set me up in order to take out her frustrations from behind her little keyboard. And this is somebody that I've mentioned in very favorable light on the show in the past. I even had her on the show before. This frustrated soccer mom, wannabe journalist, showed her true colors and went all PMS on me because I shined a light on some. All right, guys, get used. Welcome to the show. Buckle your seatbelts. All right, listen. The reason let me get back to the real topic at hand here, okay? Reason I chose to talk about this whole idea of the coexistence between the school and the in-town sports is because the subject was presented to me indirectly by a loyal listener named Ron Goralski from, you're from West Hartford area? Farmington. That's close enough. For guys in New York, anything near that part of 84 is West Hartford, so don't worry about that. Ron wrote an article for thepatch.com, which is a local content site. It's
actually
cool
all
site.
Over the country.
Yeah, but I mean they're all local. Like there's a patch for Hartford, there's a patch for
right.
Albuquerque if you're Bugs Bunny. The point is, he wrote a piece on this topic, and I liked it so much that I asked him to join me this week to go over it in detail. Also joining us in studio this morning is Gary Druckenmiller, who is, I believe, president?
Yep.
President of the West Hartford Little League. So, guys, thanks for joining me this morning. Hated to rock the boat so much to get your Saturday started. We'll keep that for last, but how you guys doing this morning?
Doing real good.
Great.
Thanks, Tom.
All right. Well, listen, Ron, apparently this all started, and by the way, if you have questions to ask of myself or of Gary and Ron, just call us at 855-HEY-COACH. But, Ron, apparently this all started because the president of one of the town's youth leagues sent a message out, an email, I believe, to the parents of not just the present players, but past players as well. I got the highlights of that email. The email was surrounding the hiring or the search process for a new athletics director for the high school.
And that was not Farmington, by the way.
Oh, it was not Farmington.
No.
Where was that?
It was a surrounding town.
Wow. Okay, so during the first commercial break, we're going to find a backbone for Ron so he can tell us what town it is. But the point of this whole email was
Simsbury.
Simsbury. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Phone lines are lighting up from people.
Yeah, I've got Secret Service that are taking care of me anyway.
The basic idea was, well, why don't you summarize the email if you can?
Well, the idea was that they wanted an athletic director that would have more input to the youth program. So they wanted to apparently build the youth programs as more of a feeder to the high schools. So, well, this was the opinion of one president of one of the youth leagues in an email that he sent out. So I'm not sure about the rest of the town, but this one youth group, they wanted a president, or at least a president of that league wanted an AD that had more input to the youth program.
So this league president clearly feels that the AD was going to, and some will say rightfully so, have an impact. But let's leave it at that at this point. Have an impact on the youth programs.
Right.
Now, it sounds like not all the parents agreed on that point.
They did not.
What was some of the kickback?
Well, some of the kickback was that you just need to leave the youth programs as they are and let the kids enjoy themselves and not be influenced by what some of them will end up going into and doing in high school.
Okay. Well, so that therein lies the backbone of this week's show. Some people think that the interaction between the school and the youth programs is an incredibly positive thing, while others see this as a very bad thing, and as usually is the case, guys, probably somewhere in the middle is where the truth is going to lie.
Right.
And that's why we not only have Ron here, but we've got Gary with us as well, because Gary is president of the West Hartford Little League. Were you, again, once you get past Danbury, I think Connecticut is one big square. Was West Hartford impacted at all by anything like this? I mean, did you guys hear about this story?
Yeah, I heard about the story through Ron.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily have any feeder systems going on right now, so to speak. And, my perspective on the whole thing is that, it is critical to keep certain age groups somewhat sacred, mm-hmm. especially the youth groups. That middle ground that you speak of, I think, is exactly where we're kind of heading towards, because we want involvement. We want involvement with some of our high school coaches. We want involvement with some of the older and available experts within the field to kind of help us out. But then there's what I would define as the over-involvement, and I think that's where this story is teetering on a little bit, mm-hmm. and what kind of gets me a little scared.
So specifically in Simsbury, the concern is more of a dominance of the youth programs versus an involvement. Is that a safe enough way to look at it? In other words, the concept of feed the eagles and starve the turkeys, maybe they're instilling that at too young an age?
Yeah. I personally, from my perspective, I think there's 4 levels mm-hmm. of involvement, right? The first one is that you have no involvement, which I don't necessarily think is such a good thing, mm-hmm. because you're basically not taking advantage of and access to certain experts. Yeah. The second one is an education perspective, mm-hmm. right? And so we're doing that a lot this year. We've got associations with groups both in the spring and the fall in terms of running clinics, and that's a good thing, sure. and it creates this connection. Then the other 2 is where it kind of gets a little fuzzy. You've got the operational involvement, which is what we're speaking about here, where you're actually now plugging the 2 together. And that isn't necessarily. Yeah, go ahead.
No. That I just love that no one turns that phone off. So Adams, the good news is the phone lines are starting to light up at 855.
That's happened
Coach,
before.
And we are going to take your calls. Yes, it has happened.
Those are the Simsbury coaches.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll be turning that off during the break, by the way.
And so the last 2, hold on, you got the operational perspective, and so that you got that connection, and then the last one is regulatory. And there was actually a story that came out a few weeks ago, a town in Ohio, which the youth league had basically been run into the ground, where a local Ohio high school association had basically run in to help get it together and take it over, and that probably has good points and bad points along with it as well.
Well, I think they all kind of have good points and bad points. Yes. My personal tendency would be to lean far away from any operational involvement. I right. think, and we're going to, like I said, we're going to take some of your calls on this at 855 Hey Coach, because I don't want to just preach from my soapbox like I usually do. It seems like we've got some intelligent folks here in studio with us. But I think the whole idea of today's show is to kind of pick this apart, because this doesn't fit in a neat little box. If you just say, and that's why I like the topic, should high school coaches and administrators be involved in the youth sports program? I say that, and I think, wow, that's great. Someone in Ohio who got taken over by, operationally and administratively by the high school probably says, no way, I don't want to do that. And there are so many pluses and minuses in between that we're gonna really have issue. Yeah, Ron.
So I'm not attacked at the Simsbury border. I just want to say that in a follow-up email after the meeting where there could have possibly been an uproar about the situation. It was very calm. It was not an issue at all. Okay. So.
Well, that's fair enough. You know what? I'm actually going to start getting to some calls here. Apparently, Adam is telling me that we've got Dan calling in on line 1. Hey, Dan. Good morning. You're on Hey Coach Tony. How you doing?
Doing well, Tony.
So, what do you got for me? Where are you calling in from this morning?
Yeah, I'm calling in from Denver, Colorado, and actually looking out my window at Pikes Peak here. So
do you miss Tim Tebow?
Colorado.
Do you miss Tim Tebow?
Not yet.
You will. First, fourth quarter, you guys are trailing. You're going to be missing him. Anyway, great to hear from Denver, Colorado this morning. So what do you got for me, Dan?
Well, Tony, I'm both a youth coach and a high school coach. I've been a youth coach for about 10 years and also been coaching at the local high school here for a couple of years. And my feeling is that, well, we need to leverage the expertise. High school coaches can bring a lot of expertise that the youth game really needs. And I'm speaking as also as a youth coach who said, hey, I think I played D1 ball. I know what I'm doing out there. But I tell you what, the game has changed and techniques have changed and expertise has changed. It's really important to get some of that high school experience helping the youth coaches out.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, no one's talked about this point yet. Anyone want to disagree that for the most part, this wonderful country of ours, while we've got some of the most sophisticated sports programs, we have some of the most unsophisticated and untrained youth coaches?
Oh, without doubt.
I mean, Dan, I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, but I got to tell you, in my own little town, there are folks who are coaching young kids who have no right coaching them. And I don't just mean the dopes who have huge egos. I'm just talking about the guys who generally and genuinely want to help the kids. They just don't know how. They don't know how to run a practice. They don't know how to teach technique.
Absolutely. You know, when I...
Oh, boy. You know what, Dan?
Pikes Peak.
Yeah, you know what, those mountains, those Rocky Mountains, man, they can wreak havoc on your cell phone coverage. Adam, if Dan calls back in and has something else to add, let's please get him tied back in. I hate to hang up on Denver, Colorado, especially since he got up at it's got to be 7 a.m. right now there. But guys, it's a good point. You know, a lot of times when I hear about people kicking back to the programs, meaning the high school programs, a lot of times it is ego driven. You know, I'll bet. Like, for example, we were telling a story earlier. I coached I coached youth football 1 year, last year. I had the time of my life. And there comes the phone again. There's a switch on the side of that phone that I'm going to ask you to just turn off in a minute. But in any event, it's going to be Dan as my guest, and I'll put him back on. I would have loved to have had more interaction, if nothing else, even to be selfish for my own kid who was going to be playing high school at the time, was going to be playing high school next year. I would love to have known, hey, guess what? This is what the high school coaches want to see from these players. Here's how they're going to be judged. So it's hard enough for a kid to crack into high school anyway. Imagine if I taught these guys the wrong way to tackle or the wrong way to block. And now as freshmen, a kid who's struggling to make the team is going to relearn how to play football.
Here's what I'm afraid of, Tony. That, you know, only 30% of those kids are probably going to move on to the high school level. Mm-hmm. So I'm afraid that they're going to concentrate on those 8 and 10-year-old superstars that we're fattening up for the high school feeding frenzy, and they may not be your studs at 14 and 15. So now it forces the youth program to focus too much on the projected stars, mm-hmm. and then possibly overlooking and even stunting the development of all the others. Because how many times do you see the 13-year-old star turn into an average high school player? I just don't want the other kids to be forgotten while we're looking at our supposed stars and, like I said, fattening them up and getting them ready. I think that the freshmen and the JV programs are the feeder.
I am Jan Elliott for Snow.
What the hell's going on?
I don't know.
Right, but here's my point.
Are the feeder programs for the varsity.
Two things. One, that's happening already. I mean, we keep picking on football. I've seen plenty of football programs, but it happens in baseball, happens in field hockey. There is so much of a feed the eagle, starve the turkeys mentality anyway. I think the fact that you feel that way is the very reason you want to get the high school guys involved, because, again, the kid who is perceived as a turkey, if he is given proper technique, proper skill set, proper mindset by the high school coach, he'll improve that much more. And he'll look better in the eyes of the high school coach. Again, if left to their own devices with a youth coach in any sport, all you can do is look at their numbers. If I'm a high school coach, and I do this again at the baseball level, I look at young kids and evaluate them through the Bayside Yankees organization, and I don't necessarily look at a kid's – matter of fact, I never look at a kid's batting average. I don't care how many home runs they hit. I want to see how a kid approaches an at-bat. And that's a kid who's been coached properly. And I can tell you that there are times that I have taken the turkey and cut the eagle because I see how they play. I'm not interested in what they're doing. At the young ages, I'm more interested in how they're doing. And I think a lot of the high school coaches are seriously looking at it from that perspective. A kid could grow a foot in a year. I mean, being extreme. A kid could put on 20 pounds in a year. So if you've got a lineman who is too small to play in 7th or even 8th grade, but you're teaching that kid the right technique that he wasn't being taught up until that point, then you see the kid's got 20 pounds on him. That could be the difference between playing and not playing.
If they're all like you, Tony, if they do concentrate on the 100% of the kids and not just the 30% that they perceive as the stars.
Well,
I've seen kids ignored.
And like I said, that's going to happen no matter what. I don't know, Gary's kind of nodding his head. That's going to happen no matter what. I mean, if you've got a coach who is capable of ignoring the kid, keeping the high school guys out of the equation isn't going to make it any better. It's just going to let them do what they want to do more. I think what you've got is less of a policing activity. And again, as a potential, you have a coach who is less than stellar, and I know Dan is waiting. Adam, if you can tell Dan that we're going to hit him after the break. I'm just going to get to this point. We're going to go to a quick break. If you leave these guys to their own devices, if they're capable of favoring kids, now imagine no one's watching. Now imagine, and again, I'm spoiled. I got Tony DiMatteo, who coaches at my high school. Tony DiMatteo is a true living legend in high school football coaches. Everyone around the country knows this guy. He does it the right way, so I'm a little spoiled. There are too few Tony DiMatteos, and there are too many Tony Bada Beeps who coach at the youth level, and all they care about is how well their son and their son's friends are going to do, so that when 8th grade is gone, that was their glory days. They don't even care what happens in high school.
But aren't the high school coaches only going to really, in the back of their minds, care about the 30% that are going to come to the high school?
They may, but I think they also care about how do you get to that 30%? Because again, the 30% at 8th grade is going to be different. And I always tell the story. We're going to go to break as soon as I finish this point. I coached 8th grade football. It was the B team. Had the time of my life doing it. The starting freshman team was comprised probably 70% of the starters were the kids from my B team, not the hallowed kids from the A team. Doesn't mean they're good kids or bad kids. It means we taught them to love football. We taught them certain basic things that they can carry with them, and a lot happened in a year, too. Kids grew. Kids got faster. All right, listen, we're going to have to go to a quick break here. I'm having a ball. The studio lines are open at 855-HEY-COACH. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. I want to remind you that you can listen live to Hey Coach Tony every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on, 940 and 1510 ESPN Radio, of course. But if you're outside the listening area, and if you're hearing this, I guess some of you are, you can listen live online. There is now a Hey Coach Tony channel on iHigh.com, and you got to check out iHigh.com. Basically, in a nutshell, you can broadcast whatever the heck you like live, and obviously not whatever you like, but in other words, your local high school team, you can put every single game live online, and they'll archive it. Just the coolest thing in the world. It's www.ihigh.com. Go check it out.
I just think everyone should call in and just ask that we have a 2 or 3 hour show here, Tony. This is fantastic.
Yeah, call the station manager, call Mo Davenport, and tell him you need 2 hours of Hey Coach Tony every Saturday morning. All right, our good buddy Dan has been patiently waiting online, calling from apparently a base camp in the Rocky Mountains because his cell phone is crapping out. But we're going to go back to Dan. Dan, thanks for being patient, man. I'm sorry we had to cut you off there.
Hey, no problem. Sorry about that earlier. So, what I was going to say, I agree with you completely, Tony. My experience is a couple of years ago, I walked on and was helping out the high school baseball team, coaching sophomores, and I was just appalled at how poorly some of the kids threw. And these are high school freshmen and sophomores that they can't throw the ball 90 feet. And, I guess as a youth coach, I kind of thought, well, at some point magically somebody waves their wand and will fix all those throwing mechanic problems that we see as 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds. But somehow that magically happens. The fact is it doesn't.
Well, let me ask you this, Dan, because this is a pet peeve of mine. Why are those kids not corrected? And I know the answer, and I'm sure you do too. Why are those kids never corrected?
Well, because it's difficult to do, and the coach is looking at that saying, boy, that's a lot of work to correct that. We could make a couple of modifications and kind of get by, but I really want to focus my team on winning.
Well, and winning means right now, especially, again, 13, 14, freshman year, sophomore year, some cases it's the first time those kids in baseball are on that bigger field. Have you ever seen a kid, and this is a kind of facetious question, you ever see a kid who hits the ball a mile at age 10, but he's got a problem with his swing, and no one ever fixes it because he hits the ball a mile, and then what happens when that kid's a sophomore and sees a real curveball for the first time? That's the real issue. And that's part of this whole problem, Dan. You know, a high school coach can look at that kid and say, I don't care how far you hit the ball, kid. If you ever want to play in high school, we're going to fix these things, and we're going to fix them now. I mean, have you ever seen a kid just completely ignored just because of their results instead of being coached and trained?
Oh, absolutely. You see that all the time, and then all of a sudden, you know, that kid that's kind of been ignored, he's developed on his own and gotten kind of a core competency, and then he gets into the, you know, freshman program, and it's like, wow, where did this kid come from? He's grown, his coordination has come together. It's like, where's this kid been hiding all along? Well, he hasn't really been hiding. It's just that he's been kind of the clumsy one, or the one that hasn't grown, or the one that grew too much too quickly. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, boom, here he is. And I think the whole point in this is that if we have, you know, high school coaches helping youth coaches teach the right things to kids fundamentally, and we focus on all of the kids and trying to bring all the kids from wherever they're starting and moving them forward as far as we can each year, then, you know, some kids, there's going to be attrition. Some kids are going to find other activities. They're not going to want to play in high school, and that's certainly fine. But we've at least given them a chance.
Yeah, and there was no downside to teaching them the right way to play, regardless of how far they go. Dan, thank you so much for getting up early and representing Denver, Colorado. Great call, and he really does have a good point. And I know, Ron, you have a real concern about those kids being ignored. I think the reality is, especially at the varsity level, you would think most coaches, and by the way, this could be, I don't want to say policed, but it could at least, you can have expectations set up front that, coach, we want to make sure all the kids are being trained in the fashion that you want them trained. We don't want this to be a feeder system of trying to identify the top talent at age 12, you know, or even 8 in some cases. Now, you know, Gary, I got to ask you, because we talked during the break about something that's interesting, and it's a potential downside, and I had heard about this in several cases where some large towns, Hartford included, there's more than one school system.
Correct.
And so what happens is the youth programs, the kids are all lopped together in one group, and then they split up when they got to go to high school. I mean, you started talking about that as it pertains to West Hartford. How does that affect the different sports in the town and the potential involvement of the high school coaches?
Yeah, no, I think it certainly does. I mean, there is, I don't necessarily say we've had any problems at the high school levels. Mm-hmm. I mean, the kids they're divided by where they live in the town. They end up going to their specific high schools. So I wouldn't say there's any athletic director or any high school coach that's inherently saying it's a problem. It's always something that they talk about because they see a lot of these kids, or some of the dads see these kids at the youth levels, and they're talking and saying to themselves, hey, I'm never going to see this kid at some point way down the line. Or,
we're going to get Coach Druckenmiller to come in here and teach these kids the right way to play. Half of the kids on our team are going to be playing against my kid next year.
Exactly.
So I don't think the coaches are the problem.
No.
Unfortunately, in this case, sometimes you've got some parents who are a little misguided in their priorities.
Right.
That might be the problem. So how do you guys handle it? I mean, at the youth level, you know, how do you guys do it?
Yeah, one of the things, I mean, this is why it was such an interesting topic when Ron proposed it to me, is that we're actually doing a lot of these things. Many of these things that Dan talked about on the phone is that we are bringing down some of the coaches to educate. It's not a feeder system. They're not looking at the kids to evaluate them. It is all with the best intentions, keeping that kind of, from a mechanics perspective, that 7U to 12U time period sacred, keeping them having fun but learning, right? Opportunity is the greatest thing that we talk about here. We're not talking about trying to take that 30% of the kids who are going to find their way there anyway. I mean, you've got kids that are naturally gifted at a sport. They're going to find their way through one way or the other. The parents kind of nudging them along, and just the fact that they're good players.
Sure.
But what this is really meant to do is to give opportunity to those few extra players who might be on that cusp, might be on that edge, and give them the chance to learn those mechanics, everything that you were kind of noting about. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, every town should be doing that. Every single town should be doing that.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think, you know, we talk about the kids that show talent. Here's a delineation that I make. There are kids that show talent, and then there are kids that show skill. And there's a difference. And let me explain to you why. And again, it's a pet peeve of mine because I watched one of my kids go through it. I have 3 children, for those of you who don't listen every week. I talk about them all the time. I have 2 girls, Sophia and Nikki, and they are both what I would call gifted, naturally born athletes. They are just athletic. My little one, I didn't realize until he took it to a birthday party that she runs like Forrest Gump. She's just so fast. My other daughter, Sophia, if you were going to invent a sport, just give her the equipment and let her go, and she'll show you how the sport should be played. She just naturally has it. TJ, my son, was the small kid, was the timid kid. And you can either say, well, let's teach him how to play chess, or lock him in his room and let him read books, or you can say, mechanically, he was sound. And so what I did in teaching him was teach him mechanics. Because I said, at some point, kid, you're going to grow. So if you hit a ball square, and we'll use baseball as the example because you're a baseball guy, I don't care how far it goes. If at age 7 and 8, if you can hit the ball square, as a pitcher, if you can throw strikes, if as an infielder you have good form and if the ball bounces 3 times to get to first base, at some point you're going to grow. And I got to tell you, that was my little experiment, and I've been thrilled at the results because all kids do grow. Yep. And I've seen the kids who could hit the ball a mile who aren't even playing baseball anymore. And I've seen the kids who were, I hate to use the term, big fat slobs, and so they stuck them on the line and they could block 3 kids because that's how wide they were. They're not playing football anymore. Right. That's because they weren't taught, and that goes back to exactly what you were saying.
Yeah, the thing is that you never know when somebody's going to blossom. Michael Jordan has stated it in numerous books over the years that he loved to play first, and then he learned to play. He didn't learn anything about basketball until he got into high school.
Yep.
Michelle Wee, you can go on and on and on. Tommy John is noted saying, I can teach somebody how to pitch at the age of 19. Mm-hmm. These are perspectives that are coming from experts, right? So who are we, right? With we've spent a lot of time in sports. We've been coaching over the years, and we've had authoritative positions. But at the end of the day, those perspectives, I think, put everything in the right voice.
Absolutely. We're having some great fun here with Ron and Gary, and we're going to continue to take your calls at 855-HEY-COACH. It's 855-439-2622. But before we go to break, I got to tell you, I want to take a quick opportunity here to say thank you to a youth baseball group called the Malvern Mud Hens. It is a youth travel program on Long Island. They contacted me to conduct a workshop for the parents and coaches just a couple of nights ago. It's been so long since I've done one of those workshops because I've gotten wrapped up with the radio and the TV stuff, but I got to tell you, it was a blast. I had so much fun, and I realized how much I miss doing those. So you guys all know me as the rough around the edges, in-your-face kind of guy, but this workshop took me back to my roots. All the psychology and philosophy behind the interaction between parents, coaches, and kids. And again, I had the time of my life talking to these parents and coaches and even some of the kids. So tell you what, if you want me to come to your school or your organization, your municipality, and address things like how to talk to the coach if you're a parent, how to monitor fan behavior at the games if you're a coach, or more importantly, how to best communicate with your own kid effectively, which, by the way, 99% of us mess that up. If you're really facing these issues like all parents around the country and you want me to come speak at your group, just shoot me an email at heycoachtony@gmail.com. You can even call the hotline after the show, which is 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. Just leave me a message. I will get back to you. I'm telling you, I had so much fun. I'm going to start doing them again. These things were a blast. So, again, call me up. Let's schedule a time for me to come and talk to your parents group. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Hey Coach Tony. This and every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. I want to remind you, you can listen live online at ihigh.com. Just search for Hey Coach Tony. You can see past episodes, the whole bit. You can catch me on Facebook at heycoachtony.com. You can call me in the evenings if you want to swap pumpkin pie recipes at 855-HEY-COACH. But we're having some fun this morning in studio talking to Ron and Gary about the interaction between the high school programs and the youth programs. And I got to tell you, Ron, I want to ask you this question because I got more than a couple of emails from folks who some insinuated, some insisted that there are strict rules in place where they live that actually go so far as to prohibit the interaction of the high school coach and the pre-high school age kid. Now, we talked during the break that the CIAC does address some of that stuff. I don't know if you have some specifics you want to share with me.
I do, actually. As far as coaching clinics go, the high schools, coaching clinics are clinics where the coach is a presenter or lecturer to a group of coaches and students who are not a member of his or her team, okay? So basically the 8th graders, the 7th graders. So the schools may permit their coaches to use their athletes okay, their players and equipment for these clinics, and they're allowed to have 3 of them per year, which I absolutely love. There's nothing better than to watch the older kids coaching the younger kids. And as long as the coaches don't bring in their own agenda, or they are looking at the kids and evaluating them, when they become freshmen next year, it's my favorite thing. I've seen it in basketball. Our high school basketball coach in Farmington held a clinic with his players. It was wonderful. Our football coach will be doing the same thing. It's my favorite thing. Older kids helping out the younger kids.
I agree, and my town does the same thing. It not only, and they do it in the form of summer camps, which as a dad I love, because not only do you get what I'll call the supervision of the varsity coach, who your kid is going to report to at some point, you also have hands-on teaching. And for girls it works a lot better than boys, but it works for both boys and girls. There is a certain level of respect that the kids have for the varsity players that they don't even have for the coach. Maybe it's something about that bordering on peer/mentoring relationship that the kids will listen to what the varsity players are saying, and guess what? The varsity players are saying what the varsity coach is teaching them. So it really does work. It's a transitive property if you're a math guy. But you know what, Ron, I gotta point something out here, because you keep touching on something, and I know verbiage is tricky. We keep saying feeder system as if it's a bad thing, and I'm going to kind of present this in a way that, don't take it personal. But
I never do.
All right, well, let me just ask you this: what's wrong with a feeder system? I'm going to ask it very general for a reason. What's wrong with the high school coach going to watch the Farmington travel baseball team, or the freshman coach goes to watch the Farmington travel baseball team to evaluate players? Because let's face it, in a tryout, any kid, and I've seen this happen, and Gary, I know you have too, there are kids who try out incredibly well. There are kids who indoors, if you're doing soft toss, look like they're going to be the next A-Rod. You get them outside, and you don't know what the hell, who swapped kid. You have a twin brother who came out, with a little oxygen deprivation. I mean, the point is, I think it's actually important for a high school coach to evaluate those players.
But that 12 and 13-year-old, and Gary can talk about this probably, that 12 and 13-year-old, when he hits high school, he may not be that stud that he was. See, to me, the freshman and the JV high school programs are the feeder programs for the varsity team.
I'll respectfully disagree. And the only reason I say that is, and again, I constantly look at kids, because I coach a 14-year-old group. I'm looking at 10-year-old kids sometimes, younger siblings of kids who play for me. And I look at it from the standpoint of, is that a kid who has some potential to grow? And so it's not picking the kids. It's getting an idea of, is this a kid I want to take a closer look at? And I think
so. You're ignoring the clumsy kid.
Nope. What? No. See, you're assuming that I'm ignoring the clumsy kid.
A lot of coaches do. Your coach
again. No. But you are right that some do.
A lot.
But I also like to give. Let's face it. What does a high school coach want to do, and what does a high school coach paid to do? Many things. I'm leading you down the path of they're paid.
They're paid to win.
They have to win. If I'm coaching high school and I'm all about equal playing time and giving every kid an opportunity, and I'm saying this in a bit of a jerk mentality for a reason, and I lose and I continue to lose, I'm going to get fired. And granted, nobody coaches high school for the paycheck. But some people need that $2, $3, $4, $5 grand additional stipend, and they want to win. And there's nothing wrong with winning at high school. So
then you need to strengthen your freshman program.
Or, in addition to that, you can strengthen the youth program and have these kids hitting the ground running.
It's a blurry line.
I don't think a kid tops out from their learning process freshman year, not by any stretch. I tell everybody, if Derek Jeter has a coach, you need a coach, which means we're all going to improve. So I think what you're to read between your lines, Ron, you don't want to try to fit these kids into a box when you evaluate them in 8th grade. But I think a high school coach, and here's where I'll say it, I think a high school coach is stupid if he does not evaluate the kids at a younger age and doesn't try to help make the youth programs better.
Well, I mean, in Connecticut, he can't.
All right, so that's what I wanted to ask you. There are people who say there's verbiage that you cannot, like a high school coach cannot interact with a pre-high school age kids. I don't know what the verbiage is. You're looking at your paper like you have it there. What is the actual verbiage?
I wish I had a little more time to look at it.
Well, while you're looking at it, just interrupt us when you're done.
Okay, he cannot hold these clinics or she for the purpose of evaluating and recruiting specific prospective student athletes.
But is there anything that says a high school coach cannot directly interact with a pre-high school age kid? Some people tell me
they
that where
can.
they live,
They've got the 3 clinics a year.
outside of the clinics. And you may not know the answer to this. If somebody does, I want a phone call.
Okay, let's get
if
a
I am
phone
a
call.
high school coach and if I'm coaching at Newtown High School and I choose to go watch a game between Newtown's travel team and Farmington's travel team, can I do that? And can I talk to Dad?
Academic recruitment programs or open houses. Such recruitment programs must be designed to present the overall educational and extracurricular programs of the school and not to be used as a smokescreen for recruiting students for athletic purposes. So if it's not educationally based, if it's not training based, anything around that, bringing them to a house, bringing them to an open house, from the sounds of it, although you can spin this and you can find in-betweens and angles, is not allowed. And that I think again is done for a lot of the reasons we talk about. Now, is that going to prevent a coach from going to the sideline and watching a game? No.
But it is going to prevent him from talking to the kid,
which is what you don't want. Which is what you don't want, especially at this level, because we're, with baseball, I think is a good example. Tony, is that you see a lot of great little league players, right? We see a ton coming through, and they're good, they're legitimate. What happens when they get to the big diamond? Many of them freak out.
Sure.
All right, those extra few feet puts kids back on their heels. Suddenly they can't field anymore, and now you're looking at a kid who just a few months earlier or a year earlier, as a 12U, transitioning over into a 13U, was fielding everything because that short distance. But you put that extra few feet there, and the balls are bouncing that extra hot, and now they're suddenly being looked at a little bit differently.
Sure.
Now, is that necessarily a transition that is expected? Is that something that has been aligned into the correspondence of evaluating these kids? I'm not so sure, because it's these gray areas of expectation.
2 things every kid remembers if you play baseball. If you're a shortstop, you remember the first time you had to make the throw and when I was a kid, there was no modified field. It was Little League field straight to the big field. So the first time you fielded a ground ball in the hole, and you had to stop and ask directions to where first base was. And the other is the first time you hit a ground ball and had to run it out. Right. It seemed like it was forever. And again, I throw into this the assumption that every high school coach wants to have what too few of them have, which is legacy and a system and a program, because those are terms that are thrown around so lightly. Everyone says, oh, our program. Guess what? You don't have a program. You have a bunch of teams. A program is something that is systematic, that if I tap an 8-year-old kid on the shoulder at 3 o'clock in the morning, or a 12-year-old, and I ask them the same question about, how do you block in this situation? Or, man on third, 1 out, fly ball, what do you do? They should all give me the same exact answer. And those are the things that I'm really talking about. I personally think, and maybe because I'm passionate about coaching, I want to go watch the younger kids play. I want to see how a kid handles himself in a pressure situation. I want to see the baseball smarts or the football smarts that you're not going to see in practice or in the gym or in a batting cage. I want to see a girl lacrosse player when they're down 2 goals and there's a minute left, if that's a girl who can take control of a game. Right. Those are the things I'm looking for. And if I'm not allowed in some of these cases to go do that, I think that is a travesty. Now, recruiting is different when you're talking about, Our Lady of Perpetual Motion or whatever that's in Newtown, Connecticut, trying to get a kid away from Newtown High School. That I buy. But if I'm in the Newtown public school system and there is no recruiting, the kid either lives there or they don't, or it's against the law anyway, why can't I go watch that kid? Why can't I say, kid, you know what? Here's what I want to see you doing, man. You got some potential. You could be a varsity player. Here's what I want to see you doing.
Okay, why can't you do that during the freshman year or JV? You have all that time to mold them then.
You can.
I say leave them alone at the youth level. Teach the coaches if you want, how you want them taught or whatever, but keep your hands off, because you'll have them the freshmen and for your JV teams. Then you can teach them.
Yeah, we're actually doing a lot of this year as well. We've partnered up with the Hall High School varsity baseball coach. His name is Jeff Billing, and a local sports association that's run by Steve and Karen Boyle called 2-for-1 Sports in West Hartford. Great program, great family. Everybody's got the right intentions. Everybody's got the right perspective on how to do things. So we've aligned ourselves with people of equal thought and equal value in terms of how to educate as early as possible. This year we've got a coaching clinic, which is actually tomorrow from 3 to 5, a hitting clinic only. So West Hartford has a little problem with hitting the baseball. Anyway, and to purely just educate our minor, which is 8, 9, 10, AAA, and majors coaches on the mechanics of hitting. And so now he's doing that, but he's also now running a 4-Sunday hitting-only program at our Little League fields for the same group, actually for 9 for 12. Again, just hitting. The same guy, Jeff Billings, coming in. So here's a guy, you talk about consistency. He's teaching the same mechanics to the coaches. He's teaching the same mechanics to these kids. It's like 60, 70 kids that we're bringing in. So that's the consistency that you're talking about. And that, that should be enough. I think coming and watching a game and making sure that those mechanics are consistently evolving as time goes on, you'll be able to see it eventually. It's not going to happen overnight.
Well, yeah, and that's really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about things that are, fundamental and beneficial to every single kid. Yeah. Those are the things that I'm talking about. I'm not going to have, like I said, if a kid lives in, and I keep picking on Newtown because it just comes to mind, if a kid lives in Newtown, unless they're going to go to a private school, they're going to be in my program. Right. And all I'm looking at is, you said you used the words as early as possible. You can never expose a kid to proper mechanics at too young an age. Now, keep it in perspective. An 8-year-old is going to have to be reminded of that at 9, and by the way, at 10 and 11 and 19 and 20. Like I said, Derek Jeter has a hitting coach, so he still doesn't have it perfect. We're never going to have it perfect, and baseball's a game of failure. All right, listen, Adam's giving me some grief here because we have to go to break. When we return, we're gonna wrap up. We could do 2 hours today easy. We're gonna wrap up on this whole concept, and I'm hoping to have a soccer mom barbecue if I have enough time to roast this annoying lady who just totally lost all respect for me. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're having some fun this morning with Ron and Gary here. We're talking about the involvement of the high school administration in the youth sports programs. And I think during the break we kind of hit the nail on the head here. While it seems like Ron and I have been disagreeing, and then Gary's been kind of Switzerland here helping to see both sides of the equation, I think what we're all trying to say is involvement in and of itself from the high school doesn't have to be a bad thing, and it's not always going to be a good thing. I think if you are a youth sports administrator, here's what I would probably try to do to summarize this. Get the high school guys involved, but monitor and go so far as to police the involvement. Have a mission statement that outlines what you want. Just take all the good things that we've discussed this morning about teaching proper mechanics, getting the kids used to the system that the high school is going to run. Have the varsity coaches and ADs teach the coaches how to coach. Teach the coaches how to evaluate. Because we talk about this all the time. The 120-pound 8th grader could be the 175-pound freshman or sophomore, or the 220-pound sophomore. So, taking the kid away from playing the line, let's say, because he's only 160 as an 8th grader, horrible potential mistake. You never know. If there's one phrase that rings true in all of youth sports is you never know. So I think, in general terms, I think the positives, if you keep them consistent, will far outweigh the negatives. I think ignoring any kid for any reason is a travesty. And if a high school coach is a gung-ho, win at all costs, you could be win at all costs at varsity. I mean, and that's, people don't like to say that. If your paycheck at all revolves around your ability to win, then go win. Right. But understand that at the youth level, they will help you win, but the way you treat those kids is very different. Like I said, the 120-pound kid who wants to play tight end, he could be your stud on varsity. So make sure those younger coaches know. Have a mission statement in place for those younger kids and stay consistent to it. Bring the knowledge, bring the expertise, bring the mentoring. Those things can really be a help.
And real quickly, just for the record, I am totally for the high school coaches training the youth coaches. Love that idea.
One of the phrases that I throw out there every now and then is, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a few great players coming up through the system, or would you like to have a ton of good players that all have the potential to be great? and that's a very interesting perspective. It talks to, there is no empirical evidence that says travel athletes or all-star athletes or elite athletes are the ones that are going to be ones at the end of the line, in varsity at whatever. There's nothing.
you.
There's
Absolutely
nothing.
not. Matter of fact, there's more empirical evidence that says the ones who are pushed at the younger ages are the ones that tend to burn out and quit.
That's
Here's where you're
70% a little bit.
70% of all kids, I've said it before, I'll say it again, 70% of all kids who play organized sports are going to quit before they're 14 years old. It's not my opinion. It is not my goal. It is not my wish. It is not my plan. Those are the facts.
Yep.
Now, all right, I'm laughing because I just got a note from Mrs. Hey Coach Tony. She heard me allude to the fact that I was going to shred this wicked shrew.
Let's do it.
Yeah, but Mrs. Hey Coach Tony says be nice. Well, sweetheart, I'm always nice. I'm always fair. At the same time, there's time to not be so nice. So, Gary and Ron both went back last night, as per my request, and watched last week's show.
Already done it.
We talked about, like I said, 20 questions or 20,000 or Googleplex questions you want to ask a coach. And again, if somebody wants to disagree with this, please call me. I was nothing but highly respectful of this woman, this mom, who wrote this little article. I was floored after the show. Okay, for those of you who don't know the backstory, after the show, I got an email. Thanks so much for covering the topic. Great show. And I have all these. I can show them to you. Tell me a little bit more about your background. So she, in other words, alluding to, I'm going to give you some write-up on my blog. Well, I went through my whole background, and I sent her all the information. I said, thanks. I think it was a great show. We clarified some points. It was terrific. I find out later, only because somebody sent me the article, that this glorified soccer mom tried to toast me, saying things like, Coach Tony's part of the problem. I'll keep calling out the Coach Tonys of the world. Went so far as to insinuate that I think the actual words were, even at the risk of sexual abuse to children, you horrid pig of a woman. That is the worst thing you could possibly say. And Mrs. Hey, Coach Tony, that's as nice as it gets. This woman is an underhanded, zero integrity slob. And let me explain to you why I say that. First of all, she didn't even have the backbone to put her name to this follow-up article. She hid behind someone else in her company and wrote it. So when I saw that, I had the common professional courtesy to reach out to her and said, hey, I don't know who this person is. I've never met them, talked to them. She's writing like she knows me. She does not. Unfortunately, she put me in a position where I have to respond. I gave her that common courtesy. You know what I got in return for that common courtesy? This cowardly, wannabe journalist soccer mom closed down the comments section of her little rant against Coach Tony. You pathetic, cowardly loser. I'm not even going to say her name. You will never hear this horrid woman's name mentioned on this show. You will never hear this ridiculous, horrible blog mentioned on this show. I was nice enough not to say, and shame on me. By the way, you want to be loser of the week? Coach Tony. Because I read that article, and I should have said what was on my mind. What nonsensical crap. Some of those questions were great. A lot of them were just horrible, stupid questions that are going to cause a parent to be labeled as the dope who doesn't know how to shut up. Great advice, soccer mom. Go hop in your Honda Odyssey, make sure the kids got their brownies in their juice boxes, and leave the journalism to the people who know what they're doing. You are a disgrace. Right, you guys are hiding under the desk. Now, getting back to reality.
Can we laugh?
No, but hang on. Did I do anything disrespectful to that woman or that article last week on the show?
No, absolutely not.
You gave her so much credit.
Yeah, a lot of PR, right? It's good PR. I thought I'd take it.
Was it a good show last week, by the way?
That was a great show.
Did we learn something last week?
I learned a lot.
Absolutely. Yes.
Did I poke any unnecessary holes in anything she said?
No, you did not.
No. Was any of the constructive criticism I gave anything but helpful?
It was all helpful and in some cases very obvious.
Well, and the obvious ones, like the one I said, hey, will you make sure there's no sexual abuse? And I said, duh. Well, what kind of an idiot's going to answer that question with, no, you know what I think we should do? We should saw off broom handles and sexually abuse all the kids. That's my goal. I put that in the parent code of conduct. You idiot. You guys didn't sign up for this part of the show. I know.
Anytime you ask yes or no questions, the answer is always going to be.
Anybody with a brain knows it. Right. If you ask a yes/no question, you get the shortest answer in the world, and nothing gets accomplished. Exactly. And that's all I pointed out. and it was how cowardly. If you disagree with what I'm doing with your little article, call the show. I say the number 1,000 times during the show. Call me. She has my cell number. Call me. Leave your comments section open. You cowardly, horrible disgrace. I think I got my point across. All right, listen, guys, I really want to thank you both for being here today. I think we learned a lot about the interaction between the school and the youth programs. Sorry about my horrible rant. Actually, I'm not. I wish I had more time just to do that. I could do another hour. Hey, guys, every Saturday, 9 a.m., please join me here for Hey, Coach Tony. Hope you enjoyed the rest of this amazing weekend. We'll see you next week.